Good morning, everyone. How are you feeling today? I heard you had a week long, full of trainings, full of panel discussions, and you've learned a lot. So I hope you're ready for another half a day of learning, but also fun. I promise there will also be fun in this. First of all, thank you, Andrea, for the introduction and for inviting me here. Yeah, I love Florence, and especially this is an amazing location. You're so lucky to have spent almost 2 weeks here. So what we will do in this first half of the day is learn about data journalism. Data journalism is a set of practices that have been at the center of debates about the future of journalism these days. They generated a lot of interest, a lot of excitement, but also a lot of controversy. And we know these practices by a number of different names. So some practitioners call them data journalism. They're also called data-driven journalism, but also computational journalism or computer-assisted reporting. And you're more likely to know them by the name of computer-assisted reporting, which has been around for decades. So what we'll do? So I think we have almost four hours, and I've been asked to give you an introduction to data journalism, but also try to give you some sense of how you can do this kind of work. So there will also be a practical session where you will have to work with data, and which I hope you will enjoy. So we'll just start with the talk. Then we're going to have a discussion session, and in the remaining time before the coffee break, I hope that we'll have some time that we can use to show you how to use some tools, how to work with a data set, and we'll be using social media data. We'll be using Twitter data. I hope you like Twitter, or I hope that you use Twitter. But for now, yeah, let's get started. Let's get started with the introduction and see how things go. So as Andreas mentioned, I am leading data journalism activities at the European Journalism Center. The European Journalism Center is a non-profit based in Brussels and in Maastricht, and they do a lot of training activities for journalists. And at the center, I established, I think about 3 years ago, a program dedicated to enabling more journalists to use data in the service of reporting. And this is our data-driven journalism initiative. In parallel to this work, I am also a researcher at the University of Amsterdam in the media department, and my specialty there is internet studies. So what we are doing there, and the initiative is called the Digital Method Initiative, and what we are doing there is developing tools, methods, and techniques for using web and social media data to understand our cultures and society. So for example, the kinds of things that we would be doing would be to look at how can we understand key issues of the day, like extremism. So how can we study extremism with Twitter? What can we learn about extremist activities with Twitter? Or what can we learn about public opinion around climate change by looking at Facebook, Twitter, Amazon, and a lot of other online services. And in addition to this work, I am also a PhD candidate at 2 universities in Belgium and the Netherlands, where I study data journalism. So in this work, I am embedded in newsrooms. So I am examining. I'm doing an ethnographic study of how journalists are using data for reporting, and how data and computational tools are reorganizing journalism workflows, and how they impact the outcome of journalistic work. So let's get started and see what data journalism is. So over the past years, we've seen many major news organizations, everything from the BBC to The Guardian to the New York Times, Le Monde, and many others, create these teams of so-called data journalists or programmer journalists. And the job of these people is to use computational tools and data in news production. And these people, and you see like three of these teams on the screen. So these people come from a mix of backgrounds. You have journalists, maybe coming from the computer-assisted reporting tradition, who had to learn, who taught themselves programming and data analysis to do their investigative work. But you also have developers with a civic mindset, who are interested to do good in society, and who are coming to newsrooms to do this kind of work. And you also have all kinds of designers, animators, interactive designers, and so on. And yeah, so if we look like at these teams, so we have in the top left corner, we have the New York Times interactive and graphics team, and you have, so in the top left corner, all the way to the left, that's Aaron Pilhofer. So he is a journalist. He is an investigative journalist who had to teach himself programming to do his work. But we also have graphic designers, Matthew Erickson here, the second to my right, and also a few programmers. In the Chicago Tribune News Applications team, so they are developers / journalists. So they are developers who, and actually Brian Boyer in the background, so he is a developer who went to a journalism school. He did an MA in journalism in the US, and this way got his way into a newsroom, producing news applications. And there you see them actually in their morning meeting. They call it a stand-up or a scrum. It's a concept coming from software development, where every morning, so the day of a software developer starts with this meeting, short meeting. It's always 15 minutes, where everyone says what they've been doing the previous day, what they'll be doing this day, today, and talk about the challenges and see how they can help each other. And the third photo is the Guardian interactive team of 2013. So again, you see a mix of developers, interactive designers, and journalists. And so as you can see from the aesthetics of some of these pictures, and especially the New York Times one, so these people are really seen as heroes today in newsrooms. And actually, the photo of the New York Times comes from an article published a couple of years ago, and it came with a headline that said something like, "What are these renegade cyber geeks doing at the New York Times?" And maybe they are saving it, so they're being seen as the saviors of newsrooms. And we're actually seeing virtually every news organization in the Anglo-American world looking to hire this sort of people. So journalists with some coding, some quantitative analysis skills. And as Emily Bell is saying, Emily Bell is a professor and director of the Tau Center for Digital Journalism at Columbia University. So she's saying newsrooms are crying out for these skills. And actually, these people have been called the journalism unicorn. So if you look at the title of the Nemo Lab article, where Emily Bell was interviewed, yeah, so people are looking to train these journalism unicorns. And why are they called unicorns? So they're rare, everyone is looking to get a hold of them, and they have these magic coding and data analysis skills. Let's see what can you do with data journalism. So how does the outcome of this kind of work look like? And the first type of story or work that you can do is what we would call putting news into context with data. So this is the work that would require the least time, the least resources. And the most prominent example of this work is the Guardian data blog. And what the Guardian data blog essentially does is to publish data sets and graphics related to the news of the day. So for example, in the example on the slide, so if Eurostat published the latest unemployment statistics, what the Guardian journalist normally would do would be to read that report, read that press release, and comment and analyze the key numbers, the key changes. And in parallel to this, what the data blog would do would be to go to the Eurostat website and say, maybe our readers want to see the full numbers. Maybe they don't just want to see the highlights, what has changed, but they want to see the full data so that they can put things in perspective and put the changes into context. So what they would do is really just go to Eurostat, get the whole data set, clean it, and publish it on their website in a spreadsheet, essentially, so in an easy-to-use format, together with some graphics and visualizations. And this is really what Simon Rogers, so this is Simon Rogers, he is the founder and former editor of the Guardian data blog. And he was one of, I think, the most popular figure, data journalist figure, until last year when he moved to Twitter, sadly for us. And this, so you see the way Simon Rogers talks about the data blog's work and its mission. It's really about curating and publishing data around the news of the day. So it's not necessarily about telling news story, breaking news. It's really just about publishing data to put news into context. Yeah, and this is kind of why I called this model of journalism, so journalism as a source of data. And you can see this focus in the way an item on the Guardian data blog, so an article is structured, and really every article ends with these items. So every article ends with a link to the spreadsheet where readers can download the whole data, and also with a call for readers to use it and produce their own analysis. Yes, so in this sense, the way the data blog imagines the journalistic act is as providing audiences with data, which arguably moves away from the way journalists imagine their mission in society traditionally. The second type of stories that you can tell with data are data-driven investigations. Yeah, and this is the computer-assisted reporting tradition that has been around since the 1950s, at least in the United States. So some of you may have heard about this. So this is as opposed to the Guardian data blog, which emphasizes the publication of data as a journalistic act. In data-driven investigations, the focus is really to use data to answer a journalistic question. So to use data to expose corruption and hold power to account in the investigative journalism tradition. And a very famous, a very good example of this kind of work in Europe was the work done by the Financial Times and the Bureau of Investigative Journalism a couple of years ago, when they did an investigation into EU structural funds. So they spent a few months looking through recipients of EU structural funds to identify waste and fraud in the way these funds are distributed by the EU. And in this way, hoping to encourage more responsible EU spending. So hoping to push for policy changes in the way these funds are distributed. And this is the kind of work that requires more time, more resources. So there were a few people with a number of different backgrounds working on this project for a few months. So it's a bit harder than the kind of work that the data blog does. And going a step further, so if you want to take this work a step further, a third type of story or project that you can do it with data is what we call news applications. And news applications are interactive databases where readers and other journalists can find their own stories. So find stories that are relevant to them personally or to their communities. And the really good example of this kind of work is ProPublica. I don't know if you've heard of ProPublica. So ProPublica is a non-profit investigative outlet in the United States. They've won a lot of awards. They haven't been around for too long. I think they've been set up in 2007 or so. But they're doing great work, and they got a lot of awards for it. And what ProPublica would do, in addition to their investigative journalism work, they set up a unit called the News Apps Unit. And what this unit does is take the data that investigative journalists are using in their work and finding a way to make it available to their readers in an interactive format. So they would build an interface like this one, and the project, the slide is a screenshot from one of their very good projects. So it's called Dollars for Docs, and what they did there is they went to the websites of big pharma companies who in the States are starting to be obliged to publish information about which doctors they give money to. So they went to the websites of these companies and they got this data about which doctors receive money from which pharma companies. And they built it into an interactive database where readers can just look up the name of their doctor or doctors in their area and see which pharma companies they are getting money from. So in this way they are achieving two goals. So with the investigative work, they are sifting through this data themselves. They are analyzing it. They are identifying cases of fraud. They are telling stories that will hopefully put the issue on the public agenda and will lead to reforms. But they are also enabling other journalists and maybe local journalists or regional journalists to look up information about doctors in their area and tell their own stories. So if you go to ProPublica's website, what you will see is that with these interactive databases where you can search information that is relevant to you, you will see alongside it, you will see stories published by investigative journalists at ProPublica, but you will also see stories published by other journalists from other publications in the States, and that are based on this data. Okay, so we've kind of got a sense of what kind of work can be done with data in journalism, but why does this work matter, and how is it different from what journalists have been doing so far? And really, this is one of the most celebrated trends in journalism at the moment, yeah, and it's said to be the future of journalism, and that the sustainability of newsrooms depends on how well they can adapt to the availability of data and integrate data in their work. But why is this practice interesting? Yeah, so what is its potential, and how is it different from what investigative journalists and other kinds of journalists have been doing so far? And we're now going a little bit into the more theoretical side of things. So proponents of data journalism have said that data journalism transforms the way journalism is done and presented. So it's said to enable new forms of sourcing, so new forms of gathering information, new forms of knowledge production, so new forms of producing stories, and new forms of presenting and distributing information. And we'll go through these one by one to see what this means. So data journalism is said to bring new sourcing practices in the newsroom. And these new sourcing practices that rely on data and quantitative analysis are kind of the cause of a culture clash between, like, what I called the geeks, so the statisticians and the developers who are getting the role of a journalist in newsrooms, and the media pundits, the political commentators. And the famous example of this culture clash is the case of Nate Silver. Have people here heard of Nate Silver? Maybe just raise your hand if you haven't. No? Okay, great. I'm going to tell you the story of Nate Silver. So Nate Silver is a New York Times statistician turned blogger, was a New York Times statistician turned blogger, and he was tasked, so in 2012, he received the task to cover the presidential elections and to do statistical analysis and electoral predictions. And at the end of 2012, kind of 10 days before the presidential election in the US, Silver did his statistical predictions based on poll results. And he wrote an article on the New York Times saying that the candidate Barack Obama had a 73.6% chance of winning the elections. And this prediction really caused an outrage among journalists and among media pundits. And you see here Joe Scarborough of MSNBC on the morning show, really calling Silver a joke and an ideologue for saying that Obama would have a bigger chance than Romney to win the elections, in a time when all political journalists were presenting the election as being a tight race. You can't really know which way it's going to go. The candidates have 50-50 chances. And what is really interesting, so why were all journalists claiming that the election had 50-50 chances? It's because of the way they source that information. It's because, and you see in Joe Scarborough's comments, so he's saying, there is no way it's different than 50-50 because I went to the campaigners in the Obama campaign and they think that they don't know if Obama is going to win. And I went and talked to the Romney campaigners and they also think that it's 50-50. So there's no way things can be different because we really went to our insider sources, so it can't be different. And as it turned out, Silver was right. So he correctly predicted the results in all 50 US states, and this really turned him into a media sensation overnight. So he's been all over TV and media in the States, and also outside it in the data journalism community. So he became a symbol for the potential of data journalism because he used statistical analysis, and he used publicly available data to write his article, and he was right. And he beat the political pundits who relied on insider information. And this really turned him into a media sensation. So he was called like a poll guru, he was called a super geek, a superman of big data, and my favorite is the Jon Stewart comment, so the Lord and God of the algorithm. And so again we see like this hero rhetoric around that we saw in the case of the New York Times photo. And yes, so this incident exemplifies. So why is this case important? This incident exemplifies a broader culture clash between different ways of looking at sourcing and knowledge production, between political pundits, political journalists on the one side, and stats geeks. So the new developers, statisticians turned journalists who are getting the same roles that editors or journalists traditionally had in newsrooms. Yes, and their sourcing methods, their approaches to producing knowledge, and what they consider to be important information. This arguably challenges traditional journalism epistemology, so the ways in which journalists traditionally have thought about how to produce information and the norms and rules that guide this process and the outcomes of this work. Right, so moving on to new forms of knowledge. So again, how is data journalism different from what journalists have been doing so far? And researchers have claimed that data journalism approaches lead to new forms of knowledge. And here we have Chris Anderson, who is a researcher and a professor at Columbia University School of Journalism. And if you look at the quote, so what Anderson says is that with data journalism, and here he refers specifically to the war logs. So he writes this for the Nieman Lab in reaction to what journalists have been doing with the war logs released by WikiLeaks a while back. So he is saying that whereas news journalists typically focused on telling news stories, so telling things that people didn't know before, so writing about recent events, maybe with a human angle. With data journalism, so what the knowledge produced is not something new, so it's not something that people didn't know before, but it's more of an in-depth exploration of a phenomena that we might already know. So the focus is more on showing patterns over time or over geographies, over locations. So as he is saying in relation to what came out of the work log, so it wasn't something that we didn't know. So it's not the newness of failure, it's the weight of failure that we got the chance to see by getting access to the full to the reports behind those events. So that's what struck us. So in a sense, you could say that data journalism is closer to like explanatory journalism rather than news journalism. Okay, so the second way to answer the question of why does data journalism matter is to look at the democratic function of the media. And data journalism, proponents of data journalism have said that data journalism approaches improve the democratic function of the media in a number of different ways. So the first one is by enhancing journalistic objectivity. And this has been claimed by Tim Berners-Lee, who is the founder of the World Wide Web. So Tim Berners-Lee says something like, so with the availability of data, journalists no longer need to find tips by chatting with their sources, with people in smoky bars, but they can equip themselves with the tools to analyze data and tell us what's going on in a country. The second way in which data journalism has been claimed to improve the democratic function of the media is by producing more accountable journalism. And this claim refers to the fact that some proponents of data journalism are claiming that not only governments should be transparent, but also journalists should be transparent about their work. So journalists should make the news-making process available to their audiences and transparent to their audiences by making available the data behind their stories so that they themselves in turn can be held to account. The third claim is that data journalism leads to more efficient journalism workflows. And this really refers to like a particular set of practices that are usually labeled as computational journalism. So this really refers to producing tools, so data sourcing, data analysis tools that would automate some of the processes that journalists have been doing manually so far in order to let journalists do the really important work, so the interpretation and storytelling work. And lastly, data journalism increases citizen participation in public life. And this claim is related to the fact that some data journalists are releasing the data behind their stories and are actually advocating for a model of journalism where journalists are transparent about their sources and about the news-making process. So the claim is that when journalists, as part of their work, release data, citizens can participate in public life by using this data and doing their own analysis and contributing to public debates. Yes, so these are kind of claims about how data journalism can improve journalism, but they're really only claims. So they still need to be proved. So I kind of want you to think about this, and maybe we can discuss this in the discussion session, because so we're yet to see if data journalism lives up to these claims. Okay, the third and really the last way to answer the question, why does data journalism matter, is through the potential of media as a business, because this is something that this is an aspect that is crucial to media work. So proponents have also claimed that data journalism can bring new business models for journalism, and this is connected to the attention and the traffic that data stories bring. And I'll give just two examples. So in this case, the Texas Tribune, there is a non-profit media organization, regional online newspaper in the States. So they're doing journalism, and they're also publishing data. And their databases, like the one here, so they're publishing information like lists of government employee salaries. And these databases that they publish comprise 75% of the entire traffic that the publication gets. So most people go to this website to look at the databases, which opens up possibilities for thinking of how this can be monetized. The second example is again the Guardian data blog. So Simon Rogers, the former editor of the data blog, claims that so readers spend substantially more time on a data blog, looking at the data blog article, than on any other sections of the Guardian website. And really the difference is huge. So it's on average, people spend around 1 minute on a Guardian article and 6 minutes on a data blog item, which is a huge difference. Okay, so if any of you is any bit familiar with the computer-assisted reporting tradition, you're probably asking yourselves by now, like, why are we talking about this as if it were a new development? Journalists have always used data in their work. And that's true. Data journalism has a very long history. And data has been used by journalists and campaigners for a very long time. And this is a very early example from 19th century Britain. So this is a graphic made by Florence Nightingale. Have any of you seen this? Because it's quite a common example that you give when you talk about the history of data journalism. Yeah, you have. Yeah. So basically, so this is a graphic done by Florence Nightingale. Florence Nightingale was a nurse and a statistician in 19th century Britain, and she wrote a report called Mortality of the British Army. So she was working as a nurse in the army, and she was witnessing the deaths of British soldiers. And based on her experience, she wrote a report that was calling for a reform of health services in the British Army. And she used data and graphics to make her case. So basically what she is saying, and what this graphic is showing, is that British soldiers died a lot more from preventable diseases than from bullets. So it was really a problem of how health services were delivered to the army. And she used this report and these graphics in her presentation, in her talk report to the parliament, to claim and to advocate for improving health services in the British Army. And she succeeded. Another historical example, again an example with impact on public policy, and this example and the Florence Nightingale examples are often mentioned as a model for the kind of impact that data journalism work should aim to achieve. So this second example is again 19th century, this time London. It's John Snow's map of cholera outbreaks. So John Snow was a doctor, and in the 1850s it was thought that cholera spread through air. So it was thought that it was poisonous air that caused cholera. And during an outbreak in London, what he did is he went and mapped cholera deaths in a district in London. And he represented each of them on a map. So he represented them with these black lines. And what he was able to show, so really each black line is a case, a death. And what he was able to show was that deaths tend to cluster around a certain pump on Broad Street, so where you see those really long black lines. So this way he was able to show that it was not air, it was not poisonous air. That was the way in which cholera was transmitted, but it was really water. And this way he was able to advocate for a change and an improvement in public services in London. to prevent the transmission of cholera through water. Yeah, and this is really, these two examples, these are, even if they are not done by journalists, but this is really data journalism at its best. So using data to refute popular claims and misconceptions. And of course, so if you are familiar with the computer-assisted reporting tradition, you are familiar with NICAR, so the National Institute of Computer-Assisted Reporting in the US. So it's an organization that has been around since, I think, 1989, so they've been around for a long time. Until recent years, they focused mainly on investigative journalism, but as more interest from a broader set of journalists, so as there is more interest in data from a broader set of journalists, you see the activities of NICAR developing outside the remit of investigative journalism. So they'd also be focusing on simply presenting data, on data visualization and other ways of putting news into context with data. Yes, so we see that, so we've kind of seen that data journalism isn't new. It has a long history. But really what we are seeing today is a move of these practices from the fringe. So they're no longer marginal practices. They're no longer only investigative journalism. But we're witnessing a move of these practices from the fringe to the center of debates about media innovation and the future of journalism. Okay, so we're now moving to a part that I think will be more relevant to your situation, having seen, so a lot of you, or some of you here are freelancers. So far, yeah, so we've seen examples, and most of these examples have come from major media organizations who have the resources to hire big teams of people to do this kind of work. But what can you do if you're not the New York Times? Like, what can you do if you don't have resources and you don't have the skills to do that kind of work? And it's really not just the New York Times and the Guardian who are doing this kind of work. And there are a lot of examples in Europe of freelance journalists, of small agencies who are engaging in this kind of work. And this is an example. So this screenshot is from an investigation into the deaths of migrants seeking refuge in Europe by way of the Mediterranean Sea. Maybe have you heard of this case? Because yeah, there have been, it's been in the media a lot lately. So what we have here is a group of freelance journalists who became interested in this topic because of all the different tragic events that have been happening recently, and they became interested in like studying the scale of this event, and they've started to look around and see who is monitoring. So who is monitoring deaths of migrants, so shipwrecks in the Mediterranean Sea. And there really is no comprehensive official monitoring effort. So what these people have done is really like found each other, talked to each other, found a way to, and decided to work together on this project and applied for funds. And there are a number of organizations that provide funds for journalistic work. And I listed like just two of them. Maybe you know them. The second one, so Journalism Grants, is a micro funding program for development journalism that the organization that I work with runs. The first one is run by a journalism nonprofit based in Brussels, and they are focusing, so they are providing funding for, and this I think will be very relevant for if you don't know it already. They are providing funding for cross-border journalism in Europe, so for collaborations between journalists in different parts of Europe. And this is what these people have done. So they've just decided to do this kind of work, found funding, got the funding because it's a great idea and a great project, and they were able to do this project, and they have actually been shortlisted, and they're very close to winning an award for their work. The second example, so what can you do if you're a freelancer and you don't have that much time, you don't have resources? This is another example of a French freelance journalist who produced a project. So the project is called Art Market for Dummies. So the idea is really so it's not hard news. It's like a soft news project, but it's really, really well executed. So his idea was that, so we mainly know art through going to museums, appreciating the aesthetics, the beauty of art, but we don't really know that much about the art market. So we know about the film industry, we know about the music industry, but we don't know that much about the art market, which is actually a lot bigger than the film and music industry. So his idea was really just to bring this topic that is mainly known by experts, to bring it to a broader audience. And he's done this work, so he's showing all kinds of things. So he's showing, here you see which are the most bankable artists, so which are the artists that sell best. And he's really done this work on his own, in his free time, for a couple of months. And when he started to get a sense of, to see the project developing really nicely, he went and talked to a media organization. So he found a media partner that can sustain and publish this work. And this project won an award. So this is one of the winners of the Data Journalism Awards from, I think, a year ago or 2 years ago. And maybe, so if you like to see more examples of what small newsrooms can do or what freelance journalists can do, there are usually a lot of entries from freelancers and small newsrooms in the Data Journalism Awards, and I'll share the slides after the talk if you're interested in the link. Okay, so let's move on to part 2. So we've seen the kind of work that you can do, but what kind of skills do you need to do this kind of work? And Cindy Royale, who is a professor in the States, so did this diagram for us that kind of shows us her idea of, she calls it a digital media data discipline. So how would the curriculum for digital media data, I would call it data journalism, look like in a university? And so what she's showing us is that, so we have the traditional skills that are taught in journalism schools. So you have the writing, reporting, and also multimedia, which have been integrated in journalism schools. But you also have new skills that are yet to be integrated. So that's a combination of computer science and math. And I know, not all journalists like math, but I think it's going to be necessary. And of course, you need the subject matter expertise. So you need the issue expertise. So why bother? Why learn these skills? And really, if you have the skills and you don't need to be an expert, you just need to know enough to be able to do your work, you will have no problem finding a job. So the demand for data literate journalists is much, much higher than the supply at the moment. Yeah, so there is a data science skills gap in journalism. And every newsroom is looking to hire people with this kind of skill. So there's really an opportunity for anyone who is a journalist and wants to not have to worry about getting a job in the next years. Okay, so we kind of, but I talked a lot about maths and programming, and I hope this didn't scare you off, because you don't need to know all that yourself if you don't want to. So you don't have to know all that to do data journalism, because data journalism is often teamwork. So the new skills that are required really mean that that new roles and new teams are being created in newsrooms, and you see different kinds of models. So you have the lone rangers, so the journalists who know some programming, some data analysis, and who are able to do all the work by themselves. So they're able to do the sourcing, the data analysis, and presentation really by just using simple visualization tools already freely available. And that's kind of the model of the Guardian data blog. So for a long time, Simon Rogers was the only person, the only journalist working on the data blog and publishing 3 to 4 items a day. So you can do simple work with really not much time and with basic data analysis and visualization skills. The other model is the 2-person team, so where you have a developer and a journalist, or developer/journalist, working together. And that was the case for the Guardian US for a long time. And they've managed to win quite a lot of awards for their work. The third model, so moving on to bigger news organizations, is the small-scale team. And that's the case of the YNYC Radio in New York. So their data journalism team is composed of 6 developers/journalists, or journalists/developers. Yeah, so they have an editor, a producer, a reporter, a designer, and 2 coders. And with this small team, they were really, during Hurricane Sandy, they were able to produce the best map of flood zones, so the most useful map of flood zones for New Yorkers. It was the most useful piece of work that media organizations could do for residents in New York at that time. And they even beat the New York Times, who has a large data journalism team. And actually, the New York Times has about 5 different departments who do work that could be labeled as data journalism. They have the computer-assisted reporting team, they have the multimedia and the graphics team, and they have the interactive news team. And the interactive news team is tasked with experimenting with online storytelling formats. And this is really a big team. They have, I think, around 35 journalists and developers who are working to enable New York Times journalists to go beyond the constraints of their content management system. So they're enabling them to tell better stories online. Okay, let's move on to the last part of the presentation, where I'd just like to quickly give you an idea of, so if you're interested to learn how to do this kind of work, so where could you start, where could you look to get some resources that will help you to learn more about this kind of work. And I'll start with some of the projects that I have been working on, but also adding some resources from elsewhere. And this is really what my work with the European Journalism Center has been about for the past 3 years. It's been about producing resources to enable more journalists to use data in reporting. And we're doing that in a number of ways. So we're regularly organizing conferences, trainings, online courses, we're producing manuals, and so on. And all these resources are free. So we have, so if you'd like to get a better sense of what kinds of projects can be done and also get some introductory tutorials, we set up this website called datadrivenjournalism.net, where we regularly publish interviews with practitioners, we feature interesting projects and tell the story behind them. We also have events, jobs, and other resources. The second resource that I like to mention is the one that Andreas mentioned at the beginning of this session, the Data Journalism Handbook. So this is a book which I edited and which contains contributions from over 70 journalists, developers, and data journalism advocates who are using the book to tell their experiences with how to do data journalism. So the book is really now, it's the Bible of data journalism. That's how people call it. So it's a reference book on how journalists can use data to improve their work. And it's being used in newsrooms, in journalism schools. And what was like really surprising for us is that it's also really interesting, and it's being used in computer science courses and in statistics courses and in graphics design courses and in communication courses. So it attracted all these audiences that we hadn't thought of. So we've just thought of making a book for journalists, and it was really good to see that more people find it relevant. So what can you learn from the book? So the book takes you really through everything that you need to know to get started. So from what data journalism is to what are the prominent examples, how are news organizations doing this kind of work, and also how to get started, from where to find data to how to ask for data, what tools to use, how to analyze data, how to find stories in data, how to present them, and how to engage audiences with your projects. Another resource that might be useful for you, and especially for those of you that are based in Italy, every year we are organizing a data journalism school not far from here in Perugia. It's part of the International Journalism Festival there. So again, it's a free event, and we have around 300 participants every year, and we always go through the basics. So all the work that we've done so far was really focusing on the basics of using data for journalistic storytelling. Yeah, and this event is really a great opportunity to learn about new tools, new techniques, new initiatives, and meet face to face with journalists with similar interests. Another really useful research that if you're interested in doing this would be like the first thing that I go to do now, because it's an online course. It's a massive open online course that started already, but that will go on for another month or so. So we're doing this online introductory course in data journalism, and we have instructors there. We have 5 modules, and our instructors are really the best people in the business. So you'll have instructors from the New York Times, from Wired, from Twitter, from Zeit Online, and other publications. The course has 21,000 participants which again we were really amazed of. So there is a huge need for these kinds of skills. And so what can you learn from the course? So so we have 5 modules. So the first one is an introduction to what data journalism is. How can you start thinking about doing this kind of work? The second one, and the other 4 are practical. So how to find data for your stories, how to learn to ask questions of the data with data analysis. Yeah, how to clean messy data, and how to tell stories with visualization. And this is done. So it's the structure is one module per week, and there is a combination of video lectures, discussions, readings, and assignments. So I'd really encourage you to go and sign up for the course if you're interested to learn more. Another really useful resource, which is done by another NGO that we regularly work with, the Open Knowledge Foundation, is the School of Data. So the School of Data also uses a combination of online courses for how to work with data, and on-site workshops where journalists learn by practicing. So they're being given a data set, and they work together to get some stories from it. Yeah, so you can see, so with their online resources, you can learn again everything from getting data to cleaning it, analyzing it, presenting it, and sharing it. Another really useful free online resource is again an online course. Maybe you know the Knight Center for Journalism in the Americas. They are doing a lot of free online courses. They are also doing courses on data journalism and data visualization. And the one that they have running now is an investigative journalism course. The last one, and this is mainly US based, but I thought I'd mention it anyway because they have some free resources, but also because so this is the National Institute of Computer Assisted Reporting in the States. So they've been training lots and lots of journalists in using data analysis for reporting, and there really isn't anything like this in Europe, which is a shame. And we see a lot of journalists from Europe going to the States to their annual events to learn data skills. The last way in which you could get in this community and you can start learning. What is really amazing about doing journalism, data journalism now, is that it's really in the beginning, which means that people are very open to sharing, to learning from each other. So there's really a lot of excitement and a lot of willingness to help. So if you talk to experienced data journalists, they would tell you that, and you ask them how did you learn this? How did you first start to do this kind of work? They would always say that they had a mentor. So they had someone in their community who was willing to spend time and teach them and show them how to do things. And there are amazing communities of support also online for these groups of journalists. And there are 2 very good mailing lists. One is maintained by the national NICAR, so the U.S. Professional Association of Computer Assisted Reporters. And the second one is maintained by the nonprofit where I work, and the Open Knowledge Foundation, another nonprofit. And basically these mailing lists are there for people to go and ask questions when there is something that they need help with, when there is something that they don't know how to do. They would just go and ask the community. There are over 1,000 journalists on each of these mailing lists, so there's a very high chance that someone will have encountered the problem that you are facing and will have an answer for you. So it's a really good way to get a quick answer to your question. The other way is to organize meetups in your area, and there is a grassroots organization called Hackers, which brings together journalists and technologists, and they organize regular meetups in different parts of the world, where people really meet and they decide on the agenda for the meeting. So if you have a few people in Florence wanting to learn these kinds of skills, you can set a meetup and meet and learn together, or get someone to come and show you how to do things. Right. So I think I'll stop here. And yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts in the discussion session. Great. So I talked a lot, so I want to hear you talk now. And I'm really curious to see what you think about these developments. If any of you are doing this kind of work, I'm actually curious. Has anyone heard about data journalism before this session? Maybe just raise your hands. You have. Yeah. Wow. Amazing. Great. So you probably knew about some of the examples that I mentioned. Okay. So I'm happy to take questions. But yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Thanks very much for that great presentation. I think data journalism is really one of the things I wanted to learn from this 2-week course. And I come from Finland, and we have this Open Knowledge Festival every year, which started like 2012. So everyone is welcome to visit us in Helsinki. I think it's usually around the cold months, but I will update you at our Facebook page. I think I have a very practical question. Most of us are probably venturing into data journalism, since if we were not doing so in the past. So I'm just curious about the remuneration. What would be the compensation on the average scale of a data-driven journalist in the European level or at the international level? I think most of us would appreciate the answer to that.
Right. Right. Well, I guess I never thought to ask our instructors how much they earn. But so I guess what I can presume is that, given that there is a huge demand for these skills and there are not enough people with this kind of skills, you'll be in a very good position to negotiate to negotiate your salary. And what I also suspect, so in the case of developers who are getting into this kind of work, so their alternatives are very well-paid jobs. So their alternatives are the startup world, the companies. So they're in a very good position to negotiate. But I think, that's a good question. I don't think I've ever seen anything publicly available on that. But maybe we should start doing that as a way to incentivize journalists to get to learn this work.
As a follow-up to Sheila's question, I was wondering, perhaps many media outlets can outsource their data journalism to, let's say, China or India, and perhaps they won't say so much.
I haven't seen examples of this yet. I mean, I can still imagine that you can use the Amazon's Mechanical Turk to get some of the cleaning work done. But what we do see in Europe, where the computer-assisted reporting tradition that the United States has is not that strong. So there aren't enough journalists with these skills in newsrooms. So then what we see is that this gap is filled by small agencies, startups. So in Europe, we see a phenomenon that we don't see in the States, which is the data journalism startup or the data journalism agency, which is like really a small group of journalists who learn, who have these kinds of skills, and are setting up an agency. And they are selling data analysis, data visualization services to newsrooms. So this could be a potential. This could be a potential business model. And I think, if you want to look into this, I think the most famous and the most successful agency in Europe is called Journalism Plus Plus, and they have offices now, I think, in 3 or 4 European capitals, in Berlin, Amsterdam, Paris, and I think also somewhere in a Scandinavian country. But I think, so far, I think, the model of working, so there is certainly a lot of outsourcing, but the outsourcing is done in the vicinity of the news organization for now. Maybe you go first and then.
Just, you said that we don't have in Europe the kind of big event like NICAR conference. In the United States, actually, we have Data Harvest conference in Brussels. It's in May. It's its annual event, and this year it was like about 200 of investigative journalists and coders. And it's a very interesting meeting. I would suggest you to go there.
Yes. Data Harvest is really great. And I'd also like to see more of the structure around an event that NICAR has, which is the professional association, so a way for journalists to a grassroots organization that will enable journalists to decide on the kinds of activities that they need and design their own training activities, which is really great about NICAR. I think that there are 3 big events in Europe, although still not all the way at the scale of NICAR, who had 1,000 participants this year. But yes, so Data Harvest is really great. The International Journalism Festival in Perugia is also really great, and also Mozilla Festival, who happens every year in London, also has more and more sessions on coding for journalists and on data analysis for journalists. Yep.
Can you make a comment about the relation between data journalism and social media, like how we can combine the two of them?
Mm-hmm. So that's actually what we're going to do in the work session. But yes, so social media is a great source of data for journalists. And I actually wrote an article about this recently for the Harvard Business Review, where I encourage journalists to go beyond. So what we see at the moment is that journalists are mainly using government data for their reporting. So they're using data collected by governments that is either made publicly available, or they are requesting it through Freedom of Information requests. But I would like to see journalists going beyond these sources, and in a sense thinking about issues that are maybe not in the remit of public institutions yet, and thinking about what to do, so how to bring an issue to the public agenda when even public institutions haven't thought starting an official monitoring process on those issues. And that's really the case, and that's why I love the project that I mentioned earlier with the migrant files. Because that's a great case for me of journalists going beyond what is on the agenda of public institutions, going beyond the activities that governments are already monitoring, and making an effort to generate or to collect their own data and being really creative about how do I report on a topic that I see is very relevant, and I think it's very relevant, but institutions haven't yet started to collect data on it. And they were really, really creative in that case. I think they've used one of their main sources of data was a collection of media articles. So there is a journalist, I think it's an Italian journalist, who has been really, really interested in this topic for a long time and has just collected on his blog every time the media reported an incident. He would just collect the links to the articles, I think going back to the 1980s. And that was really their main source of data for building a comprehensive list of these events and their circumstances. Are there any other questions? Then, how much?
I do have a question myself. So, so I'm into the internet freedoms business, internet rights. So, how you and I know that behind that data, anyway, there is always a person. So, how you think we can combine the data-driven journalism in respect of the privacy? You know, when internet rights data is privacy is the first thing that comes in my mind. And how you think this can be combined? I mean, actually, I had the same question to Paul Lewis. He was with us 2 years ago, and he was showing all the, the riots in London, and they made this amazing work about the tweet feed and mapping, and which of course is great, and for a journalist it's great to show what exactly is happening. It's important for the narrative, as you explained so far. But he was also showing, tracking where people were moving around London in order to energize the riots. So how we can combine this privacy and data journalism?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that is a valid concern. And I think work on data journalism ethics is still in the very beginning. I think what journalists are relying on now are their traditional journalism ethics, and applying the norms that they currently have about how to do reporting in the public interest without harming individuals. I think, and that's a bigger question in a way that concerns a number of things. That concerns the awareness that individuals have about how data that is generated by the use of their online services is used. So I think that at the moment, there are no standards. I think that journalists are applying their common sense as to how can you weigh in public interest versus and making sure that you don't harm individuals. And you do see a lot of editing done to ensure this, and this was especially the case with the leaks, with the war logs and other leaks, where journalists have spent a great amount of time making sure that they don't publish information that could harm individuals. All right. How much time do we still have, just to get a sense of whether we still have time for some questions? Because I'd also like to ask you some questions.
We have the coffee break in half an hour, so we have plenty of time to
Okay. Maybe I'll just quickly like to ask you a few questions, because I'm also curious about if any of you have been doing this kind of work and what you've been working on, or if you if this kind of work is being done in the countries that you come from, and if you imagine, like, how does this sound to you? Like, can you imagine integrating this kind of these kinds of skills in your work, or how is this a possibility for you, or are you considering doing this kind of work? Yeah, I'd really like to hear your thoughts.
I come from Bulgaria, and the media outlet I work for also specializes in computer-assisted reporting. And I was wondering, actually, I have read articles that, some organizations are developing software programs to create automatic journalistic content out of journalism. So what do you think about that? Because I think it is successful already to some extent, and you can create standard texts. So
I know that's being done, but being done with weather reports, no, and automatically writing stories about a weather event, or with sports. I'm not sure about the extent to which all journalism can be automated in that way, and I really think that in the case of data journalism discussions, so the role of the journalist, so the role of interpretation and storytelling is essential, and it's recognized as being essential, and it's really only the manual processes, the repetitive processes that may have had to be done manually so far, like data collection or transcribing paper records into digital records, that are starting to be automated in order to make the journalists' work easier.
Sometimes for some media projects I used infogram. It's really useful to put in visual the data. And also, like for example, I'm living in Romania, and there is the RISE project, and they created with the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, they created this platform called VIS, and some people can use it for investigative journalism, because it helps to put visually the for example, the companies involved in a corruption affair, and it really helps, because then the text is less hard to read, and it's very useful. And if you know other platform like this, maybe?
Yeah, I know Infogram, and I know the OCCRP. They're Paul Radu and Stefan Kanda are often instructors in our School of Data Journalism, and yeah, they're doing amazing work. Great. I'm glad to hear. Yeah.
Do you know other platforms like this, or like Infogram?
Right. Yes. Plenty. So that's plenty of. If you ask me after this session, I can give you a list of links to these kinds of tools. Great. Would anyone else like to add anything about their work in this area, or if they know interesting examples of this kind of work in their countries? No. Okay, great. Then I think we have enough time to move on to the second part, the more practical part. So the next part of this session, after the coffee break, will be the part where you get to do some work yourselves. And I've prepared some challenges, some assignments. And for one of them, I will need to show you some things. I will need to show you how to use some tools in order to complete it. So I think we'll use the rest of the time before the coffee break, if you can still go on for another 15 minutes or so to just quickly show you, to introduce the challenges and quickly show you the data and the tools that you will be using in the next hour after the break. Okay, let's see. Okay, so you have 1 hour for the group work, and yeah, I had to think hard of what we can do in an hour, because 1 hour is not much time. We usually have a week for data journalism trainings, but we can do 2 things. So I'll propose two types of challenges that you can choose from. You will be needing a laptop, but if you don't have one, you can just work with someone. So the first one concerns using skills that are closer to what you already know. So you'll be kind of trying to think and plan like a data journalism story and write a pitch for your editor. And the second one concerns more data analysis work. So you'll be learning to do some data analysis. And let me quickly introduce. So challenge 1 is to plan for a data story or pitch a data story to your editor. And this is based on the fact that often journalists, so the role of a journalist who comes from like a traditional writing and reporting background, in a data journalism project, these journalists get the role of really something that looks like a project manager. So the role will consist of thinking about what kind of story you want to tell, what kind of question you want to answer, and then really thinking about how you can get that work done. So thinking about what people you need to do that kind of work, what kind of data you need, what kind of resources you need and how you can find them, and really just planning all this work and coordinating people to make sure that it happens. So in this first challenge, you will be taking on this role, and you will be planning a data story. So you will be thinking of like maybe a project that you've been wanting to do, or maybe that you've got ideas for after this session, and making a plan of how you would go about like making that project happen. And that should include things like what questions do you want to find an answer to, and what story do you want to tell, but also why is that question important, so what is the social relevance of that story. Then you'll need to go into asking how can you make that work happen. So what data do you need to answer that question, where and how can you find it, what questions can you ask of that data, what tools you need, what skills you need, how much time do you need to complete it, and also how can you finance this story how can you finance this story if you're a freelance journalist, and if you are working in a media organization, how can you pitch this story to your editor in the most compelling way to make sure that they give you resources to do it. So this is kind of the first challenge, the first option for what you can do in the hour after the break. And the second option is doing some data analysis work. The second option will be learning a bit about how to work with social media data. And for that, I thought that given that we've learned a little bit about data journalism, what we could do is try to use social media data to map data journalism, so to understand data journalism as a practice. But maybe it would be helpful to know if you are using Twitter, or you know what Twitter is. Like, if you can raise your hand if you are. Okay, cool. Yeah, so we have enough people that could work on this. Right. So yeah, so the aim here will be so we have data. We have a collection of 400, I think around 400,000 tweets around keywords and hashtags related to data journalism. So our challenge would be to say if you are a reporter for the Niemann Lab or for another publication that is writing about developments in journalism, and you'll be tasked to write about data journalism, and you'd want to get the picture of data journalism with Twitter. Yeah, so you'd want to see what can you learn about data journalism with Twitter. Yeah, and this is what you'll have to do. So we have the collection of data, and we have some tools to help us analyze it. And if you choose this option 2, this challenge 2, you will be working with this data, and you will be looking to find some interesting stories about data journalism with Twitter. Okay, so to do this second task, I'll need to show you how to access the data. But maybe before we do that, let's maybe first think about. So if you were a reporter and you had to write a story about data journalism by using Twitter data. So what kinds of questions could you ask of Twitter? So what kinds of things could Twitter tell you about data journalism? So what kinds of things could you write about? This is kind of important because this is like when you're approaching the data set, you need to approach it with some questions in mind. So there you need to have some things that you want to find out. So maybe if you're just thinking, so for those of you who use Twitter, if you're just thinking about like how Twitter is usually used, so if you're thinking about the formal features of the medium, like what kinds of things do you think you could find out about data journalism from Twitter? Does anyone have any ideas? Like if you're thinking about what Twitter is used for, yeah. So like Twitter is used to share information, to share links, and you have and people are retweeting this content. So you have a measure embedded in Twitter of the popularity of content. Yeah. So.
Are you referring to trendings, or I don't understand? What?
Exactly. Yes. So
Yeah,
that's exactly one of the things that you could find out. What is the popular content? Yeah. So what is the popular content? What are the most shared URLs? This is something that you could very easily do with Twitter data. Any other ideas of what you could find out with Twitter data?
Was the question something like, what can you find through Twitter? Anything related to data-driven journalism?
Yes. So the idea would be if you would be working for the Niemann Lab, which is a media publication, so you are a reporter and you are asked to write a story about data journalism by using Twitter data. So the collection of data around data journalism keywords on Twitter and hashtags. So what people talk about in relation to data journalism on Twitter. So what are the kinds of things that you'd be planning to put in that story? What are the kinds of things that you would think? What are the kinds of questions that you would want to answer?
Well, on a personal note, I think I would like to see the updated database of tools and resources that I can use as a data-driven journalist. The best seminars and conferences for the whole year, for example.
Yeah,
such
right, exactly. And Twitter is a very good way to find that through the. So to do that, you would have to have a way to extract the URLs that are shared on hashtags and keywords related to data journalism, and then get a measure of their popularity. And the measure of their popularity is the number of retweets or the number of favorites. So that is something that you can do in the next hour. Yeah, great. So those are the kinds of questions that you can ask. So what is the most shared content? What is the most popular content? Maybe also who are the influencers in this space? Who are the people who talk about it exactly? So who are the people who talk about it most, and who are the people who influence? And for this, like in Twitter, you'd have different measures for this. So for who are the people who talk about it most, you would have the number of tweets per person, and for the influencers, you'd have the number of mentions. So which are the people, the Twitter users that are mentioned most often in relation to data journalism. And another thing that Twitter is really useful at is at identifying communities and hubs. So with Twitter data, you can very easily identify who is speaking about data journalism, and you can see whether there are clusters or communities. And this is very interesting, particularly in the case of data journalism, because of all the different groups and communities that come together in this practice. So you have a group of civic-minded hackers, you have the group of investigative journalists, computer-assisted reporters, and you have the journalists who are keen to learn these kinds of tools. You also have people interested in data visualization. So you have very, very different clusters and groups. Okay, I'll now show you quickly what is the tool that. Yes, I'll connect the projector now. Yes, so this is the tool that we will be using to access the data. This is a tool developed at the University of Amsterdam, where I do my research. So this tool pulls data from the Twitter streaming API and the Twitter REST API. And what we do with this is create collections around particular topics. So this is done by the researchers at the university who are interested to study different topics. As I said, we're studying extremism, we're studying climate change, and we want to see what can we learn about these issues with Twitter. So we're collecting all this data around relevant topics, and the one that we will be working on is the data journalism collection. And you'll be needing to access this, you will be needing a username and a password. And the username is DJ, as in data journalism. And the password is workshop. I don't know how much this helps. My handwriting isn't very good. Oh, good. Has everyone managed to log into the tool? Yeah, it worked. Okay, so it worked. Good. So if you log into the tool and access the data journalism collection, from the drop-down menu of select the data set, or actually I think you have access of a version of the tool that only has the data journalism collection, which makes things easier. Okay, so you'll be seeing, so what we see here is that we have close to 500,000 tweets around keywords related to data journalism, and we need to update the description so we can see the statistics.
Liliana, what is the URL there again?
So it's the one at the top. But let's. TCAT.digitalmethods.net/analysis. TCAT is the name of our tool, Twitter Capture and Analysis tool. Yeah, and the tool is a bit slow because it's a beta tool and it's really something that we use internally for our research, but we also there is also an open source version, so which you can install in your on your machine. Did people manage to log in, or do you still have problem? Yeah, okay, great. Okay, so what we see is, we see that we have around 500,000 tweets about data journalism, and how this collection is generated. So if you look here, you will see the keywords and hashtags that were used to generate this collection. Yeah, so we're collecting tweets around relevant hashtags. So DDJ is one of the main hashtags for this space, but also around keywords like computational journalism, data journalism, investigative journalism, and data viz and data viz, which are two big hashtags for data visualization. And we are collecting this because data visualization is a major topic for the data journalism community. So what you can see is, so the collection starts at the end of 2012. So we've been collecting this since December 2012, and it goes on until today. So it's continually collecting tweets. So we see that we have around 500,000 tweets. We have around 200,000 people, users, talking about data journalism on Twitter. And we have some basic statistics. And I wonder...
How come I have other numbers?
That's because you need to write. So in order to get the update, so you've selected your collection, and then you need to update the start date and the end date. Did you use these ones from 2012? Are they different? Is your date until the 8th of June or until the 10th? Okay. Yeah, so you have one extra. You have one extra day of tweet. Yeah. Okay. So this you see some basic statistics about the collection. So you see how many tweets you have, you see how many people are talking about data journalism. The pie chart shows you how many tweets have links and how many tweets don't have links. If you scroll down, you will have a lot of analyses that are conveniently already done for you, and what you will have to do is just export the spreadsheet and work with it. But this tool is really great for working with Twitter because it has a lot of statistics and metrics already embedded in it. And I will let you explore this on your own because they have you get explanations for what everything is, and maybe to give you some clues of the metrics that you'll be needing later to answer the questions. So, for example, hashtag frequency gives you the hashtags that are most often used when talking about data journalism on Twitter. And if you want to work with this data, all you'll have to do is click launch. You'll be asked to mention the minimum frequency that you want to include in your data set. And if the minimum frequency is set to 2, you'll be getting all the hashtags that are mentioned a minimum of 2 times in the collection. You'll click OK, and the data will be downloaded for you in a spreadsheet format, so you'll be able to work with it. And for example, what you can do with this, so with hashtag frequency, so if your question is what are people talking about in relation to data journalism on Twitter, when you get the hashtag frequency, you get exactly this. So you get what are people talking about, because hashtags can be used in relation to events, in relation to approaches, in relation to techniques, and so on. So you'll get a sense of what people are interested in on Twitter.
May I ask you something about there is a distinction between locations and geocoded. What exactly means that?
I think that comes from the fact the location is based on the location that users fill in their profile, and geolocation is based on the device that they use. So the device that they use sometimes. So if you're using an iPhone, you're sometimes asked if Twitter can use the location that your iPhone recognizes. So it's this manual versus automatic way of generating location. So what you can do with this? So all the exports will be spreadsheets. So you'll be able to see. Let's see. What is another really interesting one is the URL frequency. So if you scroll down, go to URL frequency, and launch that one. What you will be getting is what are the most treated URLs. So this is your measure. So what you want to find out in your article is what is the popular content, this is the metric to use. So you will have to download this data. All right, and I'll let you explore this. I'll let you explore this on your own because it's really easy to understand. You have an explanation for each metric. I think the only thing that I will have to show you is if you want to. So if you're choosing. So after this, we'll be splitting in groups, and we'll decide what everyone is working on. And if you are interested to answer the question, are there communities? Are there hubs in the data journalism Twitter space? For that one, you will be needing to use a social network analysis tool. Have people here heard about social network analysis? Okay, so social network analysis allows you to explore relations between objects. So it's a way to analyze social activity. And then let me open the tool and show you what I mean. So for social network analysis, what we are using at the university is Gephi. which is an open source tool developed by some colleagues at Sciences Po. And what Gephi does is it lets you explore social networks. So social networks are composed of nodes and connections between the nodes, which we call edges. And a really easy way to understand what you can do with social network analysis, so what its potential is to analyze your Facebook network. Has anyone ever tried to do that? No. Okay, so maybe let's do that, because I think it's really fun, but it's also really the best way in which you can understand the value of this type of analysis and start thinking about how you can apply this in a journalistic context. And maybe let's do this together. So if you go, so to do this analysis.
Do it now or after the coffee break?
How much time do you have?
Well, I'm flexible, but the coffee break is supposed to start now. But
No.
We are flexible, of course. So
Maybe if we can quickly do this now, because if we do this, we have everything we need, and after the break, you can just start working, because you'll be needing a bit of time. This will be only 5 minutes, really. So if you want to do this analysis in parallel with me, so if you want to analyze your Facebook network, and what this analysis will tell you is, are there clusters? Are there hubs? Are there cliques of friends in your Facebook network? And you can easily start thinking about how you can apply this in a journalistic context when you want to see what are the relations between people. So if you want to do this, what you have to do is connect to your Facebook account and access an application called NetViz. And NetViz is an application, again, developed by one of the researchers at the University of Amsterdam. And we use this application mainly to analyze public groups, pages. So we're using it to analyze, for example, debates around climate change on pages, on Facebook pages related to climate change. But you can also use it to analyze your Facebook network, which is like a more fun application. Yeah, so this is the name of the application. So if you log into your Facebook and you search for this application, it will give you the option to export your network. And let me quickly also log in so I can show you exactly what you need to export. Did you manage to find the application? Yeah? Okay. So if you are on NetViz, so what you'll have to do, so we'll want to analyze your personal network. So you'll have to click on personal network, and it tells you what it does. It extracts your friend and the connections between them. And you will not want to check friends, like, and post count, so we don't want that. We really just want the friends and their connections. So you'll just want to click on Start, and the data will be exported for you. and you'll just want to save that somewhere on your computer so that we can import it into Gephi and work with it. The, yes. So did you click on start? Again, it might be a bit slow. Like, these are beta tools, and these are tools developed by humanities researchers who build these tools because of our research needs, because we want to find ways in which we can use this data to understand culture and society. So you'll get two options. You'll get the option to get the data in tabular format and to get the data in GDF. And we want the GDF option, so you just want to right click on it and save. Yep, so so if you save that data, so for those of you who exported it, what you'll want to do, so save the file somewhere on your computer, then go to Gephi. Did you install Gephi before the session? Okay. Right, then maybe, I suggest maybe you can look at someone who has. It's right click and save. Instead of just clicking on it, just right click and save. The GDF is a format specific. It's a graph network file, and basically it has information about the objects and their relation. That one is just file, open. So for those of you. funziona? I'll quickly show you, for those of you who managed to import the file, I'll quickly show you what to do with this, just so we can stop for a coffee break. Right. Any ideas how to make this full screen? Oh, it's okay. So that's okay. That should work. Okay. So you have your network, yeah. So you can see in the top right corner the number of nodes. So that's your number of friends, and the edges are the relations between the friends. Yeah, so that's the basic information about your graph. So how Gephi works is you have your workspace. So this is the place where you will be working with your network in real time. And you have a number of panels. So you have a layout panel. So here you will be choosing the algorithm that will spatialize your network. And these are force-directed algorithms. So basically what they do is they position the nodes in the network according to the number of connections between the nodes. So nodes that have more connections between them will be pulled together, and nodes with fewer connections are pushed further apart towards the sides of the graph. So the first thing that you will want to do, and this, like, Gephi does a lot of things, but we'll really learn like just 3 basic things so you can visualize a social network. So what you'll want to do is choose from the layout panel. You'll want to choose the algorithm that you'll use, and we'll be using Force Atlas 2. And you'll want to hit run. Yeah. And as you hit run, what the algorithm does now is compute the connections between the nodes and bring together nodes that have more communities. And you see the ones that have few connections, and that one that we don't see anymore actually had just one. So the nodes that are connected, basically in this case just to me, are being pushed towards the side of the node, towards the side of the graph, and the nodes that are well connected are being grouped into these clusters. Yeah, so you can see clusters emerging. You can see clusters of, in this case, friends emerging.
It doesn't say nothing about nodes, right?
So in order to see, so what will be interesting here will be to see who these people are. So you want to see what are these clusters. And to do that, you'll want to click the T at the bottom. Yeah. So maybe if you guys could pay attention to this, just because you'll need this to do the network, and then, yeah, we'll do some troubleshooting in the coffee break maybe. So if you click on the T, which I won't click just for the sake of my friends' privacies, but if you click on the T, you'll see the names of your friends. So in the bottom bar, yeah, I have my cursor on it. Yeah, did it work for you? Yeah, okay. And if you want to, so if it gets a bit cluttered, you can choose to adjust the label. So you'll always want to choose scaled. And if it's still cluttered, which I think it will be, you'll want to change the scaling of the graph. So you'll want to create more space in the graph. So if you go to the layout panel and scroll down in tuning, you get to scaling, and you can try to increase that, like increase it to 20. You need to run the algorithm again, and you'll see that it creates space, which means that now you can see the labels a lot easier. Okay, so we want to do 2 things with this. So the first thing that we want to see, so one thing that social network analysis can show you is clusters and communities. And the way to do that is through a classical social network analysis metric called modularity. So what modularity does, so modularity is an algorithm that helps to detect communities based on the position of the nodes in the network. So you'll want to hit modularity. So you'll want to click run. And you'll want to just click OK. You will get a report for how the communities were computed. So it tells you, basically, the algorithm tells you that it detected 47 communities, and then it shows you the distribution of these communities. So basically, you're seeing that at the bottom, so most of these clusters that it detected have between 0 and 5 people in them, and there are really just a few that have.
How he defines community, like a minimum of
it's based on the position of the nodes in relation to each other, and on the number of connections.
So at least 2, for example, or at least 3?
It's more complicated than that. It's based on a paper. Okay. So if you want to see exactly how it's calculated, you'll need to read the statistical mechanics paper. Yeah, like yeah. So you'll just want to close this. Yeah. And now, so we computed modularity, and we want to see this on the graph. Yeah, so we want to see the communities. And in order to see that, we want to go to the top left panel, the one called partition. You'll want to make sure that nodes is selected. So now we're computing metrics for nodes. You'll want to hit refresh and choose modularity class. So that is what we just computed. We choose modularity class, and we see. So it gives us here the list of groups. Yeah, and it colors them accordingly. You'll want to click on apply, and what it does is it gives different colors to the different communities to make it easier to explore these communities. Let's see. Okay, so this allows you to explore the different groups, the different cliques of friends. And another thing that we'll want to do that can have interesting applications in journalism also is, let's say we want to see. So if we want to spread a message in a community, who are the people that we should be talking to? So who are the people that we should send that message to make sure that everyone receives it? So who are the information brokers in the community, in a group, or who are the bridges between different communities? And to do that, we will want to calculate another social network analysis metric, which is the network diameter. Yeah, so you'll want to go to network diameter, and you'll want to hit run. And what you see, so it tells you what it calculates. And what we're interested here is in betweenness centrality. So what betweenness centrality does is it measures how often a node appears on the shortest path between other nodes in the network. So it basically tells you which are the bridges between the different hubs, between the different cliques in your network. And if you just click OK, then Gephi will calculate betweenness centrality. It will give you the report, and you can read about, like, if you want to really get into the details of how this algorithm is computed, you get the reference to the paper that was used to generate it. But for our purposes, we just want to hit close. And okay, so we calculated that, and now we want to see it in the network. So we want to have an easy way to see this metric in our graph. And to do that, we go again to the top left panel. This time we want to use ranking. Yeah, so we want to use the feature of size. So we want to use the size of the nodes to tell something about our network. So if you go to ranking and choose a ranking parameter, what we're interested in is betweenness centrality, because we want to see who are the brokers of information in this network. And we want, so we already, what you see here is color, but we don't want to use color because we already used color to show communities. So we want to use another feature. We want to use size. So then you click on the red diamond, and you hit apply. Yeah, and once you do that, you will see that some nodes got bigger than others, and those are the nodes that are the bridges between the different communities. So those are the people that connect the different communities together. And yeah, and if you want to think about how to use this in journalism, like something like the offshore leaks investigation, so anything that involves looking at relations between men in power, between powerful actors in society, is something that can benefit from social network analysis. Okay, so now if you are doing this kind of analysis with, like, for your work, yeah.
Like, let's say that you want to explore the media ownership relations, okay? But you need to have a database for that. I mean, you cannot find the database on Facebook.
No.
So you have to create the database first, and in order to do that, you need the information first.
Exactly.
So,
yeah, but you can once you have that information.
But do you do it first on a spreadsheet and then upload it there, or?
Yeah. So basically, I think the question here is not that much about availability of data as about like how you're thinking about what to do with that data. So you usually get a spreadsheet and you usually decide to do some statistical analysis on it. But there are ways to turn that spreadsheet into a graph network file. So there are ways to use that data to determine relations between
for example, on Gephi, can you upload a spreadsheet and then, okay.
Yes, so there is a way, and like if you ask me, I can give you, I don't remember if I included them in the tip sheet that I'll be sharing after, once I'm done with this. But there are ways to build your own graph file based on a spreadsheet. And yeah, maybe just ask me and I'll give you some links for how to do that. But so if this was a data set about say media ownership, what you'll want to do now is to like have the names and just explore the different relations. And yeah, and it's also fun to explore it with Facebook, because you usually discover that you have friends that are connected that you had no idea about those connections, and it helps you see in a way how those groups got to be composed. Okay, if you're happy with how your graph looks like and you want to have it for later, you can export it. You can go to the preview panel. So in the top bar menu, preview, and you'll want to click on refresh. Yeah, so you'll see your network. Yours will have the names if you clicked on the T, and you can export it in a number of ways. So you can export it as a PDF or as a vector file if you want to work on it further. Because Gephi really isn't a data visualization tool; it's a data analysis tool. So it's used for exploration, and to make this understandable and readable, you'll have to export it as a vector file and go to Illustrator and make it more readable. Right. So this is all that I wanted to show you, and this should be enough to do the challenges. So the last thing that I want to give you before the break is a Google document. So in this Google document, which I'm hoping to, let's see, there must be a way to do this full screen. So the last thing before the break is to go to this Google document where I put all the information that I just told you, so the 2 challenges. And the easiest way is to just use the bit.ly. So if you type that down into your browser, you'll have access to the document where you can see the 2 challenges, so you can read about what you're going to have to do. And I also added here, so I added the questions that you'll work on answering. I added the links to the tools and to the data set, basically everything that I've mentioned. So if you just go to this and explore it during the coffee break, which I hope we can still have. And yeah, and after the break, we can just break into groups and see who would like to do what. Yeah.
Yeah, so since we have a lot of exciting things to do, since we have a lot of exciting things to do, just have a 10 minutes coffee break, so we're going to be able to come back and keep working on these things.
We have 9 people for planning for the data story. So this is something that that you can do. You can make this plan individually or in a group. So I would really leave it up to you now to discuss and see if you find things in common. So see if you want to work together on developing a plan for data story, or if you want to do this work individually. So this is something that can be done by one person or by a group. So I'll leave it up to you to decide how to cluster. Maybe just once you've done the clustering, if you could add to the spreadsheet like the name or the number of your group, so that you can see who is working on what, and see how we organize the presentation session. For challenge 2, so for mapping the data generating space for Twitter, we have so also around 9 people. For this one, I would say, so I would recommend, so we have 5 questions that we want to ask. And there are, the first 4 questions are similar in style. So for the first 4 questions, like your challenge will be to identify the data set in BootCamp, the tool that I showed you, that will give you the data that you need to answer this question. And the analysis will be simple. You'll just need to do some filtering and some sorting to get the top URLs or the top most mentioned users. And so I would suggest, so here we should be having at least 2 groups. One of it focusing on the first 4 questions, and one focusing on the 5th question, which is the question of can we identify hubs or communities? And this is the question where you will be doing social network analysis. So this is, you will be needing to use Gephi for this one. So for people who liked Gephi and were able to install it and can work with it, I'd suggest that you take this one, and I can help you with this analysis. So now I'd say so. Let's start with this one. This is the easier. So who wants to answer the 5th question? Can we identify hubs or communities in the data generating user space? Does everyone dare to work with Gephi again? Yeah. Yeah. Great. Okay. Yeah. Anyone else? Perfect. And you want and the residents so on. Yeah. Great. Now, who wants to look at, and I think these 2. Let's do the first 3 questions into another group. No, for these ones, for the rest you don't need Gephi, you just need a spreadsheet. That's a basic sorting and filtering. Let me yes. So let's group the first 3 questions together because they're similar. And we have a group working on this, and maybe a third group working on who are the influencers. So who would like to work on popular content? So identifying popular content information. also look at who are the most mentioned users, so looking at active live chain. Who would like to do that? You're also in, you're not in another group, are you? Okay. Anyone else? Wanting to look at this? Okay, is there someone who doesn't have a group? Because you're in the first one, yeah. But for, okay, so for those of you who are in the first one, in doing the first challenge, you can discuss among yourselves and decide who you want to work with. And for those of you, from those of you who signed up for the second challenge, is there someone who isn't assigned to a question? No. Okay, great. Well, then we can start. So you can, so there are different rooms that you can use, and I heard that the garden is a sought after workplace, so you can choose to work there also. I'll be around, so if there are things that we need help with, just let me know. After this hour, so we'll have a presentation. I'm not sure what we usually do with, you guys remember that? What format do you have for presentation?
Usually, we manage the time. Usually, yeah, we have like now lunch is 50 minutes, let's say. So just open. But it's not really a formal presentation. Or if you like, we can announce that.
Yeah, let's see how things go. So if we have time, it would be great to see what we've been working on. So for the first challenge, the format will be if you work in a shared document, and you'll just have a one-page or something like this. And for the second one, it will be for the second challenge. So mapping data in space with Twitter. It's great to get to learn how to use the tool and get the data, but it will be also really interesting to use your journalistic skills and do some desk research and see, for example, when you have the list of top influencers, see who are those people, like what are they doing, what are they talking about, and try to see if you can develop a story around that. And that, again, given the time constraints, can be just a list of bullet points, but try to think of what is interesting. So once you've got your list, once you have your influencers, like so what is interesting about that? Okay, so with this, I'll let you get started, and yes, and I'll come and work with you on the social
which time period do you want us to?
You can do, okay, so I think maybe the most, given that you don't have time to do temporal analysis, so you don't have time to compare different time periods, I suggest to just use the overall, use the entire collection. So, and you can see it. When you select the collection, you can just choose the date when the collection was started up to today. And one thing that's important to know about that, when you do the export, the default is set to monthly, and you'll want to set it to overall. Because otherwise, every spreadsheet that you will download will have the data per month. So you'll see like the top influencers of the month. But what you want to do is just overall, just because there's not enough time. Okay, so what I mean, so with dates, so you'll just be choosing the dates that define the collection and select the data set. And what I mean by default, so in tweet statistics and activity metrics, so the default is actually per day. But what you'll want for every export that you do, so before clicking on tweet stats to download the spreadsheet, you want to click overall. So you want the statistics for the
Yes, it takes a lot